Before tea became a drink, it grew wild in the humid mountain borderlands of southwest China, where warm rain, fog, and rich soil helped the tea plant thrive for ages. The plant that gave the world tea belongs to the Camellia family, and its deep roots in southwest China shaped the first chapter of the story. Long before anyone wrote about tea, people living near those forests would have known these leaves by smell, taste, and the way the body felt after drinking them. The oldest stories say tea entered human life through observation, experiment, and the slow memory of many generations. Later Chinese tradition gave this beginning a legendary face in Shennong, the divine farmer who was said to test plants and learn which ones healed and which ones harmed. In the old tale, Shennong sat beneath a tree while water boiled nearby and a few leaves drifted into the pot. He drank the infusion, felt refreshed, and remembered the leaf. No one can prove that moment happened, yet the legend matters because it shows how Chinese culture understood tea for centuries as a gift discovered through careful attention to nature. The first life of tea was close to medicine because early people valued plants for what they could do inside the body. Early records suggest tea was first used in cooked mixtures and medicinal brews before it became the clear drink many people know today. That makes sense, because a bitter leaf that lifts fatigue and sharpens the mind would have stood out in any early farming society. Over time, people in different parts of China learned that tea could be prepared with great care and also enjoyed for pleasure. By the Han period, tea had moved beyond a local plant and reached elite circles. Archaeological remains from the Hanyangling Mausoleum near Xi'an show that tea was used more than 2,000 years ago. That discovery changed the story from legend alone to physical evidence. Tea now stood on two foundations at once: myth in memory and leaves in the ground. In early China, that combination gave tea unusual power because it linked the practical world of farming to the sacred world of origin stories. Writers of later centuries look back and saw tea as a sign of civilization itself, a humble plant turned into culture through patience and skill. By the 3rd century, medical texts mention tea in ways that show the drink was already known. That matters because it places tea inside everyday life, where knowledge leaves the realm of legend and enters written history. Tea did not spread in a single burst. It moved slowly through households, markets, monasteries, and official networks, changing shape as it traveled. At first, tea could be boiled with onions, ginger, citrus peel, or grain because early drinkers treated it more like a hearty preparation than a pure leaf infusion. That older style tells us tea became refined over time through many experiments in taste. The great turning point came when tea met Buddhism. Monks needed alert minds for long meditation, long reading, and long nights of copying texts. Tea answered that need with quiet force. A drink that lifted drowsiness without drunkenness fit the discipline of monastic life. Monasteries also helped standardize habits because monks repeated the same actions day after day until custom became ritual. Tea grew stronger inside Buddhist culture and then flowed outward into wider society. During the Tang dynasty, China became wealthier, more urban, and more connected, and tea rose with that world. Roads improved, markets expanded, and regional products moved farther than before. Tea could now leave the mountains and enter the empire. In this age, tea was often steamed, pounded, pressed into cakes, dried, and then later ground for drinking. That form made tea easier to tax, transport, store, and trade across long distances. Tea was becoming an economic object as much as a drink. One man would give this rising culture its clearest voice. His name was Lu Yu. Lu Yu was born in the Tang era and grew into the first great writer of tea. Stories about his youth say he was raised in a monastery and later moved through the worlds of learning, performance, and friendship. Those experiences matter because Lu Yu understood tea from several angles at once: labor, art, discipline, and social grace. In the 760s, he wrote The Classic of Tea, the first known monograph devoted to tea. The book described origins, tools, water, preparation, vessels, places, and the spirit of proper tea drinking. Lu Yu gave tea a language of precision. He cared about the quality of leaves, the purity of water, the shape of cups, and the behavior of the people who gathered to drink. Through Lu Yu, tea became more than refreshment. Tea became a way to think about order, balance, taste, and character. That is why later generations remembered Lu Yu almost as a patron saint of tea. His writing helped fix tea inside Chinese identity during a time when the empire wanted forms of elegance that were both refined and distinctly its own. Tea also moved west and upward through hard country toward Tibet. Archaeological evidence from western Tibet shows tea reached the plateau by about 1800 years ago. That early movement reveals how valuable the leaf had become. Tea was light enough to carry and important enough to protect. Across the plateau, tea joined milk, butter, and salt to form a powerful everyday drink suited to cold and altitude. In these exchanges, tea shaped bodies, trade routes, and diplomacy at the same time. The route later called the Tea Horse Road grew from these needs. It was never one single road. It was a web of dangerous tracks linking Yunnan, Sichuan, Tibet, and lands beyond. Along those paths, tea was pressed into durable forms that could survive rain, rough travel, and months on animal backs. Empires wanted horses, and highland communities wanted tea, so a leaf became part of statecraft. Tea entered military thinking because cavalry needed strong horses, and horses came from lands where tea was prized. Back in China, tea kept evolving inside the cup. During the Song dynasty, elite tea culture turned toward whisked powdered tea, prepared with great skill and judged with a trained eye. People admired the foam, the color, the bowl, and the steadiness of the hand that made it. Tea had become performance. Tea had also become aesthetics, where a single bowl could express discipline, restraint, and social rank. Even the tools told a story, because kilns produced bowls prized for how they showed the surface of whipped tea. At the same time, common people across towns and villages continued to drink tea in simpler ways that rarely entered famous books. That hidden daily habit is one reason tea endured. A culture survives when ordinary people carry it forward between the moments that historians record. Tea also crossed the sea to Japan through monks and missions that connected the islands to Han China. By the early 9th century, Buddhist monks such as Saicho and Kukai were linked to tea's arrival in Japan. Tea first took root in religious and courtly circles there, just as it had done in China. In 815, Emperor Saga is associated with an early reliable reference to tea drinking in Japan. Tea faded for a time and then returned with renewed force. In 1091, the Zen monk Eisai brought back tea seeds and fresh zeal after study in China. Eisai praised tea as a support for health and focused wakefulness, and his message fit Zen practice perfectly. The tea culture that later matured into the Japanese tea ceremony grew from these religious roots, then expanded into a distinct art of hospitality. Back in China, dynasties changed and tea changed with them. Under the Yuan and then the Ming, people moved away from the elaborate world of tea cakes and powdered whipping toward brewing loose leaves in vessels. A famous imperial decree in 1391 under the Hongwu Emperor ordered tribute tea to shift from compressed cakes to loose leaf form. That decision lowered labor demands and helped push Chinese tea culture toward methods closer to modern brewing. Now the leaf itself stood at the center. Water temperature, leaf shape, aroma, and infusion time gained fresh importance. This shift also encouraged new teaware, including the small unglazed clay pots later celebrated in places such as Yixing. The modern image of brewed tea in a pot owes much to this Ming transformation. As sea trade expanded, tea moved toward the outside world. Portuguese merchants and missionaries encountered tea in China during the 16th century and carried early knowledge of it to Europe. At first, Europe heard of tea through reports, letters, and small encounters far from the great centers of Chinese tea culture. Tea was rare, expensive, and strange to many Europeans who first met it. The Dutch East India Company shipped the first known consignment of China tea to Europe in 1610. That journey began a new stage in tea history because the leaf was now entering global trade by sea. Tea reached Amsterdam, then other ports, then drawing rooms, shops, and coffee houses. In England, tea appeared in the 17th century and slowly climbed from curiosity to fashion. Samuel Pepys wrote of drinking tea in 1660, a small moment that now looks like a quiet hinge in history. At court, Catherine of Braganza helped make tea fashionable among the English elite after her marriage to Charles II. Once fashion embraced tea, demand grew fast. Demand changed the balance of trade between Europe and China. European buyers wanted huge amounts of tea, silk, and porcelain, while China wanted silver. That silver drain worried British officials and merchants for decades. Tea now sat inside the machinery of empire. The British East India Company became one of the great engines of that trade. Tea also changed daily life in Britain, where hot sweet tea fit the rhythms of work, class, and home. Smuggling flourished because taxes were high and tea had become a necessity for many households. Across the Atlantic, tea entered British North America and then collided with politics. When Parliament passed the Tea Act in 1770, many colonists saw tea as a symbol of control. On the night of December 16, 1773, protesters in Boston threw 342 chests of tea into the harbor. In that moment, a leaf from China helped ignite an American revolution. Yet the most dramatic struggle over tea was still unfolding in Asia. Britain still wanted tea, and China still wanted payment on Chinese terms. To solve that imbalance, British merchants expanded the opium trade from India into China. The profits from opium helped finance the purchase of tea. That grim trade fed addiction in China and anger in the Qing state. When the Qing government moved to suppress opium, Britain answered with force in the First Opium War from 1839 to 1842. Tea had become tied to gunboats, treaties, and imperial violence. This was one of the darkest turns in tea history because desire for a comforting drink helped sustain an international system built on coercion. At the same time, British officials looked for a way to grow tea within lands they controlled. They wanted independence from Chinese supply and greater control over profit. In Assam, the story began with a truth local people already knew. Tea grew there already, and indigenous communities such as the Singpho had long used it. Colonial accounts later celebrated discovery, yet the plant was never lost to the people who lived with it. Robert Bruce learned of Assam tea in 1823 through local knowledge connected to the Singpho chief, Bisagam, and others. That encounter opened the path to a new tea empire in India. British botanists confirmed the plant was a variety suited to the region, and Assam would become one of the great tea lands of the world. The next leap came through espionage as well as cultivation. In 1848, Robert Fortune traveled through China for the East India Company to gather tea plants and manufacturing knowledge. He studied how green and black tea were made and arranged for plants and skilled workers to move toward India. Fortune used Wardian cases, sealed glass boxes that kept fragile plants alive on long sea voyages. Many of the Chinese plants struggled in India, yet the transferred knowledge of processing proved vital. The stronger future for British imperial tea lay in Assam's own plants and in huge systems of labor. Plantations needed land, transport machinery, discipline, and many workers whose lives were tightly controlled. Tea's rise in India carries achievement, adaptation, and deep exploitation in the same frame. Darjeeling opened another chapter when Archibald Campbell planted tea in the Himalayan foothills in 1841. Cool air, altitude, and mountain weather produced leaves with a delicate fragrance, unlike Assam's bold strength. In Ceylon, tea rose after disaster. Coffee rust struck the island in 1869 and ruined the coffee economy that had covered the hills. Tea stepped into that vacuum. James Taylor built one of the first successful commercial tea operations there in the 1860s, and Ceylon tea soon entered world markets. By the late 19th century, tea from India and Ceylon was reshaping global supply. Railways, steamships, and industrial packing turned tea into one of the great mass commodities of modern life. At the same time, tea kept local meanings wherever it settled. In Russia, tea arrived overland through caravan trade and became tied to samovars, sweetness, and long conversation. In Central and West Asia, the word for tea often followed the inland route and sounded like cha. In maritime Europe, many languages followed the seaborne route and said tea or a related form. The names preserved the roots. The drink also entered factories and working homes during the Industrial Age because it was hot, cheap, energizing, and easy to sweeten. That daily cup linked distant plantations to urban labor through empire and habit. In India, tea later moved from plantation export to everyday popular drink through chai, where leaves met milk, sugar, and spices. This style came from local taste, street commerce, and the availability of strong black tea made for fast infusion. Tea could be austere in a monastery, elegant in a palace, rough in a work camp, and intimate at a family table. That range explains tea's unusual power in history. Very few plants have traveled so far while keeping so many meanings alive at once. The origin of tea was never a single event trapped in one legend. The origin of tea was a long human process shaped by forests, experiment, religion, trade, writing, empire, and labor. A wild leaf in the mountains became a medicine, then a craft, then a ritual, then a commodity, then a daily companion for billions. And in every cup, some trace of that first mountain rain still remains.